What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we will be reviewing Godzilla -1 minus color. So Godzilla -1 minus color is the new re-released version of Godzilla -1, and it obviously does what the title would imply, and it strips away the color for the film. I know that there's kind of a stigma against black and white films. In fact, here, I'll let in-depth Cindy explain to you what that stigma is.
There's a stigma surrounding black and white films. Many audience members today attribute a lack of color in a movie with being pretentious, inflated, and sometimes even visually boring, reserved strictly for film students, hipsters, or cinema nerds.
If you didn't get that, let me let Movie Law explain it to you in literally the exact same words.
There's a stigma surrounding black and white films. Some people attribute a lack of color in a movie to being pretentious, inflated, and visually boring, reserved strictly for film students, hipsters, or cinema nerds.
It was funny to come across. Sorry, I had to call that out. I also know that black and white might not be the most popular thing for YouTube retention, so here, let me just... Is that better? I've seen Godzilla -1 a whole lot. I actually don't know how many times I've seen it. The last of which being Godzilla minus color, and I have to say that, oh my god, this movie never gets old. It's just so good. I really love this movie, and I love everything about it. Before I get into the comparison between what the minus color does for the film, let me catch you up to speed if you don't know what the movie's about. Spoiler warning. Godzilla -1 is Japan's newest Godzilla film, coming to us from director Takashi Yamazaki and taking us back to the roots of Godzilla. The film follows a pilot, Koichi Shikishima, who fled his duty during World War II. On his day of his sortie, Shikishima diverts to Oto Island and pretends that his plane has malfunctioned, only to come face to face with Godzilla, the dinosaur god of Oto Island. Godzilla massacres all the mechanics on the island, and due to Shikishima's inactions, no one has the ability to take him on. Following his return home, and due to his survival even though he was a kamikaze pilot, Shikishima is viewed as a coward and a disgrace other than to Noriko Oishi. She's a woman who's been left homeless and alone after the United States air raids and has found herself in the care of a child. Over the next few years, Shikishima and Noriko raise the child, Akiko, together and build their family and lives. Shikishima works on the Shinsei Maru, a ship meant to disarm undersea mines left over during the war. Everyone's lives eventually grinds to a halt as Godzilla emerges from the sea, now transformed into the god of destruction by a United States A-bomb test. Shikishima and his friends attempt to combat Godzilla, who proves to be too mighty for them and too powerful for the Taco. Godzilla then raids Ginza, ending his rampage by unleashing a devastating atomic detonation upon Tokyo that transforms it into a smoldering memorial to the unknown. In the wake of this, Shikishima is left to pick up the pieces of his life, as Noriko has been seemingly killed by Godzilla. With the support of his friends and help from his neighbor, Sumiko Ota, Shikishima is trying to move forward. Shikishima then accompanies his friends, Akitsu, Mizushima, and Noda, to a citizen-led meeting where former war vets band together to take down Godzilla. After some preparation and reconciliation, Operation Wadsumi is launched, and Godzilla is attacked at sea. They sink Godzilla using Freon tanks and then pull him to the surface, causing him to contend with rapid depressurization. Using the power of the sea to weaken Godzilla, Shikishima delivers the killing blow in his modified Shinden. It's then revealed that Shikishima was forgiven by the only other survivor of the Oto massacre, Tachibana. Shikishima returns to land to learn that Noriko has survived. As the two reunite in the hospital, Shikishima's war is finally over. Godzilla -1 is already a fantastic film to begin with the best human elements maybe ever put to film in a Godzilla movie, and some of the strongest characters we've ever seen in the franchise, some of the most incredible kaiju destruction sequences we've ever gotten, with the Ginza scene in particular being a highlight, although actually I really love that Oto massacre. It might be my favorite scene in the movie, I just think it's wonderfully done. And a really classic interpretation of Godzilla that takes him back to his destructive roots and returns him to his status as a walking nuclear bomb. The film is also accompanied by wonderful sound design and an incredible soundtrack that uses Akira Ifukube's music better than almost any Godzilla movie has since his death, and is topped off by Oscar-nominated VFX. Taking that and turning it into the minus color version might not seem all that attractive, but they didn't just desaturate the movie, they painstakingly went through the entire film, shot by shot, to make sure that every shot looks as good as it could. I tried to put together a little black and white all scenes in order myself, and it's really difficult to match the aesthetic they achieved with this this film. They didn't just make the film desaturated, they boosted the contrast, but it's really hard to do that because the film was shot in color, and so oftentimes you wind up blowing out the characters' faces or raising the background so much that the whole thing looks ugly. So to go through every shot and make it look as good as it does is a really hard thing to do. With color, there's so much to consider in the frame. Every single design element stands out in some ways that some may consider to be obtrusive. As someone who used to hate black and white but has really grown to appreciate it, I can say that for me, black and white is the beautiful art of reduction. Taking out so many of these details and transforming the image into a world of gray that has a real elegance to it. Black and white is truly about texture, as most people will tell you, and Godzilla -1 is a beautiful movie with beautiful textures. Black and white is also a sophisticated art that calls back to the past, and that's why -1 was the perfect Godzilla film to do this with. I've watched Godzilla vs. Kong transformed into black and white, and you don't really gain anything from it. By simply desaturating a Godzilla film, it isn't enough. There's no point in watching a MonsterVerse movie desaturated. They're just simply not made of the right DNA to support that. -1 is not only a higher work of art than most other Godzilla movies, but it's also a period piece. Black and white has a real sense of romanticism to it that's lost in most modern color grading. And so by taking us back to black and white, it makes things more unique, and it makes them more vintage, and it makes them more beautiful. Black and white is also just a little more real. Because we're so used to the things that we watch in black and white being so old that oftentimes a lot of the tricks had to be pulled off in camera and there was a real tangibility to them, and often because a lot of the black and white footage we're associated with is documentary footage, it's really easy to provide a new sense of realism to the film through black and white. I'm not saying the movie's more realistic, nor am I saying it plays more like a real documentary, but what I'm saying is that the brain, or at least my brain, has been wired to give black and white a certain leniency that I wouldn't always otherwise. Not only does it help the special effects blend completely seamlessly into the scenes, even in some of the shots where it doesn't exactly blend perfectly in the real film, but it also makes the whole thing feel like it was truly captured in camera. Although there is at least a couple shots where I felt like the VFX were really solid in color and you lost a little bit of that going into black and white. Sometimes it doesn't always work for the best. How do you remember World War II? If you're like me, you remember it in black and white. And that's something that this film plays with. The idea that this film is in black and white takes us back to the wartime era and makes us feel closer to the setting and themes of the movie. The color value in the film is a little bit lost, and that is something I would like to acknowledge. Color is used to represent a lot of different things throughout Godzilla -1, but in particular and most often I felt that the costume designer's brilliant work was covered up through this black and white version. The color green in Godzilla -1 is often used in association with wealth. As we see Shikishima and his family grow into their wealth and rebuild their house and family, we also see more greens incorporated into what they wear and into their house. You lose that in the black and white. However, the black and white does leave more to the imagination and allows the viewer the ability to interpret more for themselves. By removing the color, it also makes the film feel a little more dramatic and helps Yamazaki's attempt to bring out the feeling of despair upon despair. When Yamazaki said that this version was going to be more of a horror movie than the colored version, what I was really hoping for was a really noir-styled color grading, but as I tried to color it myself, I realized that's just simply not possible given the way the movie was shot. That's still to say that the film's themes of trauma and post-traumatic stress are brought through and elevated in the black and white, even if I personally felt the horror elements could have been taken further. While I felt that the nighttime sequences were absolutely on point and were the best sequences in the movie, the daytime sequences, the attack on Ginza, those are areas where I really wish the shadows could have been harsher and the whole film could have been darker and grittier through the black and white. So what's lost by the transition to black and white? Well, some of the thematic use of color is lost, and certainly the appeal and the charm of the blue atomic breath being in such stark contrast to the very brown world at hand is muted. The atomic breath is still striking, but the beam itself and the explosions it causes are elevated through the use of color. Some of the naturally beautiful environments are also lost as we transition to black and white, and we do sometimes lose track of the characters as they blend into their environments and the chaos through the black and white. Sometimes the color is used to make the characters stand out in contrast to a crowd, and you lose that in the black and white version. What do you gain though? Well, for me, I gained a deeper connection to the original Godzilla, taking me back to the roots of the franchise. I also gained a stronger sense of the post-war trauma. I felt that this was a rawer viewing experience and a little more real. I also felt it elevated the film as an art form. I also gained a real appreciation for textures. This was the first black and white movie where I felt like the textures really spoke to me. Oftentimes when you take a colored film and translate it to black and white, I don't really like that. But this was a film where I was now noticing the clouds, the ocean, the dirt, the way everybody's faces had a little grime to it. It was so beautiful. Also, the movie has a new sound mix, or at least according to some reports it has a new sound sound mix, and I'm not convinced it does. I think that the movie might have the same sound mix, but because the color has been stripped away, you're now focusing on everything else even more, and so you're gaining the appreciation of the sound even more. That being said, I personally noticed a lot of areas where I felt like there was changes or improvements to the sound, and I don't know if it's my ears playing tricks on me or if it was a literal change they made. But there were certain scenes that came to life even more, certain sounds that were more intense than they were before. The Odo Island sequence in particular, actually before Godzilla even shows up, had a much more brilliant sound design. The chase scene at sea where Godzilla is trying to attack the Shinsei Maru felt like that sound design was more intense, and Ginza in particular was really striking. There was almost a Geiger counter-like noise that I picked up on crackling under Godzilla's first footsteps in Ginza that I have not been able to hear previously. I also went back to check the previously released clip of Godzilla -1, and they're not present in that, which makes me believe that the sound design truly has been revamped. I felt that this was a fantastic experience that harkened back to the roots of Godzilla on a level that this film already was doing, but even more so than it was able to accomplish on its own. I'm not sure how the monochromatic or orthochromatic, as it was called, version of Shin Godzilla played. I don't know how that looked or how it went over, but what I do know is that Godzilla -1 is a far closer relative to the 1954 film than Shin Godzilla was, and so by bringing the film to black and white, you're amplifying the shared elements between -1, Godzilla 1954, and Godzilla Raids Again on a level that you aren't able to do with the colored version. Godzilla -1 is already a very unique viewing experience as a Westerner, and this made it feel even more special. I would say that Godzilla -1 minus color is a beautiful way to watch a beautiful film. I don't know if it's as good as the original. I'm still gonna stick to the colored version, although every couple watches I would love to go back to the black and white version, so please hopefully it's on the home release for the movie. I would really like to be able to toggle between the two because I feel like every 5 viewings of -1, which I watch Godzilla movies so much that that's a very real thing to happen within 1 year alone, I would probably switch it back over to the monochromatic version. This is the best black and white re-release of a colored film I have ever come across, and oftentimes when they do this, I find it to be completely unnecessary. I didn't gain anything from seeing Parasite in black and white, but Godzilla -1 minus color I felt was a really fantastic capitalization of the black and white technique. I would give this film a 9 out of 10 for what it is, maybe even a 10 out of 10, but there are some things that I think shine through a little better in color, and so I'll give it a 9 out of 10. What a wonderful viewing experience, and I cannot wait to see it again. Have you seen Godzilla -1 minus color? If so, comment below and let me know what was your favorite part of it and what maybe was your least favorite part of it. I would love to hear your experience with the film. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It's through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to do videos like this in the first place, and it is their support that directly goes to supporting this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.